There we go. Hey, let's welcome some people if we haven't already. Let's see. I think I'm trying to see if there's if you haven't been on a call before, just unmute and scream out. Very
This is my
informal.
first time. I'm Angie Retman.
Oh, wait a second. I'm not seeing you. You're on page 2.
Here, I'll turn my video on for a second.
Look at that.
I'm right here.
Angie. More females, more power.
Woo woo, that's
Sorry,
right.
Angie, I left you out earlier. Angie, where are you at?
I am in Portland, Oregon. I work with Brian Becker at Willamette Christian Church.
Love it. Love it. Love Brian.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think I saw Brian coming in. Yeah, Brian's over there.
He should be
There he
there.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. He always looks like he's on a television set when he comes on these calls. He makes sure that his background is like all
He looks
set
really
up and
cool.
perfect. Yeah, really cool like that. Anybody else that hasn't been on a call at all? Anybody at all? I think Tracy, you were on last time. Did you get a chance to introduce yourself, or did we miss that part?
I think I did.
Okay, cool. I got 2 pages. Brandon Beard is kind of our host of the most, so he'll catch anybody else that hasn't been on here at all. Here's my objective today, you guys. What's up, Ezra? Here's my objective today. We're going to share screen here in just a second. I'm going to say this out loud so that I'll remember. But part of the goal at the end of one of the things we want to do at the end of the call today, you guys, and some of you are going to be like, oh my gosh, is Lee sick or ill? But is I want to just take the last 5 minutes just to pray over you guys and your churches for Easter and all that's coming up. I know, shocker, spiritual. I know, it's okay. Everybody calm down. And just have a moment just to pray for you guys. So I'm going to watch the clock a little bit, and Jeff and some of these guys will keep me accountable as well, to making sure that we do that so that we can at least have the time. Because I know about the last 5 minutes, some of you have lunches and you have things that you have to go to depending on what side of the country you're on. So I want to make sure and respect that, but also talk about those things. So Derek, do you want to share screen? You want me to do it? Look at you, because you can go big. Awesome. I'm going to pull mine up here. Yep, there we are. Any other rookies we haven't heard from real quick? Anybody who hasn't been on the call? Let us know. Unmute. Come on, we want to hear from you.
Hey, Lee, I haven't been on a call before, so Josh
Bring
Towers, glad to be here.
Josh, tell us where you are. I know where you are, but these guys don't.
Yeah, I'm in the Sacramento, California area, and I worked for Bayside Church up here for a while, and now I'm doing something a little different, running a nonprofit. Kind of staying in touch though, so it's helpful to be connected.
Josh, what's the name of the nonprofit? I know what it is, but it's a little inside joke for us.
Yeah, Simply Water. So we're creating clean water access internationally, doing some cool stuff.
Love it. I totally love that, bro. Josh, I'm glad you're here, man. Seriously. Totally glad you're here. Thanks for being here. Hey, today we're going to do some stuff, guys. Just so you guys know, just a little business real quick while we wait for a few other people. There's an invite scan QR, which you guys aren't going to probably use, but Derek will go to it on the screen. Again, appreciate all of you guys coming in that are new. One of the objectives to our call is not only to have you be on the call, but to actually get you on the list so that whether you're able to be on the monthly call or not, you're going to get an email by the end of the day tomorrow with any of the conversation via the deck that we try to always prepare, and the recording, because we're remembering to record of the call. So it's important for you to get in that, because I realize it's once a month for 1 hour, and so sometimes schedules conflict. So if you have people that you would like to be on the call, you can feel free to send them the link. It's easier than sending us like, hey, include them, and we'll make sure they get included. As I say every month, so I apologize. We do want to try to maintain a degree of focus on these calls. So they're really designed for, I don't know what the right term would be, executive level church and nonprofit leaders. So if, there's some great resources out there for children's pastors and next gen people and all of that. This is typically not the call for them. So use some of your discretion as far as how you distribute that. And that will help us, because we want them to actually really benefit from it. So that's what's really cool. I want to start today. I really want to create some dialogue today with you guys. So I want you to be quick on the unmute button. If you're able, we're going to do three things today. Okay. The first one's just kind of a little bit of a breaker. Then we're going to talk Easter engagement, and then we're going to pivot to a little bit of an ROI conversation. This is a quote for you to ponder, and I want you to unmute if you want to ponder it out loud with the rest of us on this call. It really is just kind of that like bookend to the prayer time that we're going to have at the end. Some of us have been having conversations and some of our side conversations from people that are part of the Grow Momentum Think Tank circle around this idea of kind of celebrity and influence and what does that look like. So I thought this was an interesting way to state it. So I'll just read it to you and you can kind of interact with how it resonates with you. But the way I stated it was this way: one of the most crucial parts of leading in the church today is the difficult daily work of choosing to become less famous than you might or could have been. And you're like, what does that mean? I would love to hear what you think that means, because I think there's a crucial part in the series, in the culture and the context that we're in, and the influencer context that all of us operate and try to lead churches and lead people to Jesus, that this is a crucial, at least interior dialogue for us to have. Maybe you hate this as you hear me saying it or see it on the screen, or you disagree with it. I'm cool with that too. Talk to it for a second if you don't mind. Anybody? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, hey Lee, this is Marcus from Muscatine, Washington.
Hey Marcus, what's up, bud?
Hey, what's up, man? The first thing I think about is John the Baptist saying that I must decrease so that he must increase. So a constant dying to self, the praise and recognition that you could acquire or get, you continue to lay that at Jesus's feet and let him increase in your life.
Love it. Love it. How are you guys dealing with that, as those of you that are especially leading at a high level in your churches, with the prevalence and the need for, and we'll even talk about this in a few minutes with our Easter engagement, with you to sort of be, I mean, the pastoral role typically in the Western church has always sort of been that front man communicator or front person communicator. How do you guys see this playing out now with you guys, where your teams may be talking to you, or you have this desire to kind of get in front of people more? You know, how is that working with what Marcus just said, and the idea of like denying self, all of those sorts of things? Talk about that a little bit. Anybody wrestling with that, or maybe you guys have all got the humility piece figured out? Bryce, you guys were doing some real work and stuff like that on Instagram, and it made you want to vomit in your mouth. I wasn't sure why, so maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, I think it was just not leaning into what you don't know, but also not leaning into just trusting that other people have their departments handled, and wanting to touch everything, be on top of everything, and be the idea person. And
was there anything around, was there also, well, I was asking you too, is there anything around just your face being there that was making you uncomfortable, or you're good with that?
I think I'm good with that. I don't know, you know me, I struggle with, yeah. I think I struggle with wanting it to not be, I mean, I think it goes down to, it doesn't have to be my idea, but it also goes down to it's an interesting transition right now for me, being the church planner and then having team members come up and take ownership and be leading out and doing a really good job and coming up with innovative ideas, and me having to take my hand off the wheel and be like, I think we've done it. I think I can let go. And that just doesn't It's
You would
not
defi-
natural.
you would define that in this based on this quote as becoming less famous than you might have been based on
guess,
their
yeah,
emergence. Yeah, I got you. I got
yeah.
you. Cool. Anybody else? I just thought it was an interesting concept, but maybe nobody else is struggling with that. Chris Hall?
No, I don't struggle with it. I mean, it's hard being humble when you're perfect, right, Lee? You know, it's
I
better than
understand.
anyone else. But
I
I
understand.
don't know. I think there's a very real thing. Like the reason why a lot of us are in the position we're in is that we love the stage. We probably find a sense of identity in the stage because we care about how many people are in the seats in front of us, probably a lot more than we should. And social media has given us a platform to make our stage even bigger. And I think a lot of us have to look in the mirror and say, am I called to the people that God's called me to here in the local setting? Or am I called to make myself famous in other settings?
Right.
I think there's a bit of narcissism in every single one of us that needs to be put in check, and it becomes in check by putting that into practice as often as possible, like you said.
Ezra?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, and that was spot on. There's such a market where it's build your brand, build your platform, build your podcast, build your following, build your YouTube channel, right? I mean, just that whole YouTube hustle culture that's marketed to us all the time. And I'm like, I don't even follow these people. Like, why is my feed filled with so much of this kind of stuff? But I think it is. And then it kind of comes under this umbrella of, well, we're doing it for the kingdom of God. Like we're building our church or our platform so that Jesus can be more famous to all people. But so it feels like, to come back to Andy Stanley, it's like a problem, attention to manage, and then also a problem to solve and to avoid. So it does. I mean, I think even when we have a good heart, there's still that desire to say, okay, but could this further Jesus being more famous?
Right. Right.
The lines are blurred, I guess.
I feel that as well. Like, I think there's a heart issue. We're going to move on, but I think there's a heart and a motivational issue that a lot of us just have to be realistic about, you know, the denial of self, denial of those things. And I thought it was interesting because I didn't know where Bryce was going with that, but I think it's kind of interesting as I process what he was saying there, more of the idea of like, it's not only like the public facing part of us, but it's also the role that we play within our team, and how do we allow our team to accelerate and or increase, maybe is a better word, and how do we then potentially decrease at some level, I think is very, very interesting. And I hadn't thought of it in that light. So that's pretty cool. Again, I don't want to belabor it. I just thought it was kind of interesting for us as a group to kind of lean into a little bit and talk about it, because I think there is that temptation for us to get there real quick, where it's like the famous part, and the whole Christian celebrity thing is probably a topic for another call at some point. But I think that's good. Cool. Any last words? We're going to keep moving. All right, here's what we're going to talk about today. Two things that Derek's putting up on the screen is the idea of, I want to talk about Easter engagement and what does that look like for you guys. We have 18 days, if I did my math right, something like that. So those of you specifically, I know Josh and Flavo and some of the rest of you are not in the church world, but those of you that specifically are in the church world, you know, I want to talk about and I want to hear from you guys. So again, our team doesn't want to dominate. I really love to hear from you guys. We're just going to give some structure to some things that maybe are still accessible to you in the next 18 days. Let me just rattle off 3 or 4 thoughts that I have. And then you guys that are on the call, because we want to collaborate, can come in behind that and give us some of that. Because there's probably a wide range of people that are leading here on the call where it's like, yeah, we got this nailed. This is our sweet spot. We're pumped. And there's probably some of you that are like, saw that 18 days on the earlier slide and thought, holy crap, what are we doing? So let's not assume everybody's got it together, but I'd love to hear from some of you that may have a perspective. So let me just give you 4. And Kay, I know you're listening. These all start with C. So I just want everybody to be very aware that they all start with C. And it was a lot of work to get there. Okay. So it's really important for you guys to give me credit for that. Okay. So here's the 4. So here would be my encouragement. Number 1 is, I hope that you have, beyond an Easter service strategy, how we're going to do this, how are we going to, you know, you've got the invite thing going on. I'm just here with Mike and Benita. They've got invite cards that are spread out all over the campus, all those things. Those are awesome. Beyond that, let's assume that both our people show up in massive numbers, and let's make the assumption that some folks who we've never seen that are just trying to trust a Christian or are curious about faith or were invited to a place where they could potentially seek out a relationship with Jesus. Let's assume they show up. I want us to talk for the next 10 minutes around what would be some practical ways in which we could be led of the Spirit and led of a strategy that would be contextual. So everything I'm about to say, I need you to contextualize it for if you're in Belltown, Seattle, if you're in Wabash, Indiana, if you're in Tucson, Arizona, you're in Sacramento, California, wherever you are, contextual, okay? But I'm going to give you these thoughts. Some of you have seen a few of these before this call, so I would love for you to weigh in. So number one would be, make sure that you have a clear plan for what I'm calling an identification incentive. What that means is every time we talk about that pathway for people, that we want to move them from the gathering into a step of engagement, we always have to start with identification. Derek, move forward to that. Is there a slide around? Keep going right there. Thank you. When you guys see this, when we talk about Church on Mission with Grow Minimum, guys, this would be a magnification of that pathway. It's the assumption that most of the people, and especially because we're talking about Easter, are going to enter your sphere through a gathering, and they're going to enter through one of these influence zones that you have. You might have others, right? But through an invite, through a social media post, through watching online for a few weeks, through some sort of what we call brand awareness, which really means your community knows you're there. They're going to enter. We really talk about identification as a primary objective for you as a team to really think about, because identification and or identity is really a valued commodity in our culture. So when someone's giving you their information, they're basically communicating that they trust you enough to give it to you, because they're not stupid. And they know that if they're giving you their information, you're going to do something with it, right? And so a focus on how do we, not in a manipulative way or in a non-contextual way, how do we give the best opportunity for someone to actually identify themselves as being there? So Derek, if you'd go back to that other slide. So when you talk about an identification incentive, I would not want to dictate for you what that might be, but it needs to be simple. It needs to be something they can do day of. It needs to be all of that. I'm going to be careful here. If you're just doing the Connect card as a physical card in the back of your seat, I want you to spend the next 18 days pondering whether that is the most efficient way for you to identify people. It may be in your context. That's why I don't want to be, I don't want to assume that it isn't, but I want to challenge you guys to think beyond just the Connect card, and to think the goal is, how do we engage people where they identify themselves as being present in any way, shape, or form? All right. We talk about it a lot on these calls. We call it FDA's first time data ads. It means that people are getting added to your database on a weekly basis because they're doing something at your church. So they're going to Matt's church, they're going to Joel's church, they're going to Neil's church, they're going to Cowan's church, and they're identifying themselves, and they may never fill out a Connect card ever, right? They're doing some other means of communication. So if you're only focusing your assimilation, for lack of a better term, your pathway on people who fill out a Connect card, you're missing an entire group of people who are actually would be identified as guests. You're just not identifying them in that way. All right. So on Easter, I would think about some clear identification incentives. Some of this is going to be really dumb, you guys, so forgive me or put this is really dumb in the chat, but I want to just stir your minds a little bit. Churches will do, if you're a church that does, photos on Easter, a lot of churches will do that. You can incentivize identification by allowing them to give you their information in order to receive a digital copy of that picture, right? Things like that you can do. Obviously, there's some other means. If you're doing some other sort of community outreach things around Easter, like Derek at our Midtown location loves to have the Easter bunny. I don't even want to hear about it. It's so sick and dirty. But you know, things that we're doing like that, if you're one of those dirty Easter people with the Easter bunny, but any of those things that happen that you can use to identify would be awesome. Anybody on the call, and I want to move through this, but anybody on the call have anything to contribute as far as, hey, here's some ways in which we're creatively getting people to identify themselves? Anybody want to weigh in to help others not be famous?
We're still not a super large church, so it works for us. But our people know that if they have a friend come, one of their jobs is to get them to our welcome desk to fill that out.
Got it.
And because we're not super large, they will introduce them to either me or one of our other staff as well.
Love it. Love it. Somebody else?
We're making our guest gifts like loud and dramatic, and the first thing they see when they walk in. And so it's going to be clear who's walking around with a box or, and so really that's, I think we're doing even a scaled down Connect card for our Easter services.
Right.
So yeah.
I would, Joe, that's a great point. Again, I don't want to get extremely practical here, but I think, and you only have 18 days, but I think especially if you're using digital, this might be a chance in the next week for you guys that are in that position to go back and scrub your Connect card. I think Kay and some of the guys on the call, maybe Joe even, might have some thoughts on that. I think sometimes when we see in our churches your identification or your Connect card, sometimes there's some assumptions you guys make there, or there's some information you're collecting there that may be extravagant or unnecessary, and potentially you may need to scrub it because it may be detrimental to them actually filling out the card or giving you, you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like when you go to the doctor and they give you 4 pages on a clipboard and you just say, forget it, I'm out. So I would be careful that if your main incentive is for them to identify themselves so that you can begin the engagement process, just be careful that you're not asking them to give you their social security number and their childhood address from their home that they lived in 10 years ago. Like, some of you guys have connection cards that are probably as long as a U-Haul receipt. You need to go back, and if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. You need to go back and look at it and make sure that it gets just the primary things that will allow your team to engage with them. Okay.
Yeah, we just did that, simplified the card, and actually then created a QR code that people could just scan and not have to actually physically fill it out.
Right.
You just do it on their phone.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because I think, again, you guys are all in your own context. I know what some of your teams are going to say, but man, if you haven't pushed hard to move to digital, you need to start, because you're creating a challenge for people when they're physically, again, practically, right? They're writing the wrong phone number. You've got to have a team come in to get that in. Like, just stop it. Like, you got to figure out a way to just cold turkey get people to move over to the digital thing. They're doing it everywhere else. So let's not pretend in the church that people won't do it. They will do it. So just sometimes they're not doing it because we're not forcing them to do it. So again, you know your context, but I would say if you're slow, right, Collins? If you're slow on the digital move, we got to get them there, because it's going to save a lot of work and a lot of efficiency on the other side. Bosma, discount for merchandise, text to get a digital copy. Yeah, awesome. What Bosma put in the chat is there some interactive part of your service where you can actually have people answer a question or respond in some way via text that would also create some identification of people that you haven't seen yet? I think that's an amazing idea. Like, something that would be part of your, not weird, stop, everybody that's weird, stop, but something that actually would fit in at your host moment, that would actually be conducive to the service, that would also force some identification. Look at Bosma coming in with the hot idea. It's nice. All right, let's go to the second piece. The second piece is, let's assume they've identified themselves. I want you guys, as you're being led of the Spirit in your context, to make sure you have a concise follow-up strategy. It might be the time in the next 2 weeks or shorter to meet with whoever or whatever team is responsible for your Easter, for your typical follow-up, and to just make sure, where are we with our Easter? Are we prepared for 3 or 4 times the amount of people that we're going to lean into? Are we happy with what we're currently doing, or do we need to reimagine what we're doing as far as that initial first touch that's happening? All of you on the call I assume almost all of you are doing something at this step. If you've been around us enough, you know that we would press on you to. But I think anytime we have these moments, it's a good time to at least pause and go, okay, is this working? Is it the best method? Is there something we need to tweak? Is there something we need to do to be more effective at it? Okay. So that follow-up strategy that we're talking about here has to do with like, what is that touch within the first 48 hours that's going to reconnect them with their visit to your church? Both, again, I'm not looking over both online, but especially physically. What is that touch? I want to say it again, within the first 48 hours that's going to reconnect them to your church, because you're going to have the spectrum. When Kay does the spiritual spectrum, that, from 0 to 10, and we talk about 5 being that step of faith, I would assume at Easter, you're going to have some people that are in the -3, -4, and you're going to have people that are in the +1, +2, but maybe are not connected to the church. So you're going to have a lot of people that you're going to have to formulate a process for you to get a follow-up strategy and touch with them. Okay. I assume a lot of you guys are using text. A lot of you guys are using a combination of text and email, those sorts of things. You're going to hear me say it again, but maybe it's just me. I would spend the next 2 weeks figuring out what is the leverage of digital that can happen in that moment. Some of you guys were at Think Tank Live in October here in town. And we had Ryan Pineda, who's a influencer on social media and does all that stuff and has purple hair. And he came in and talked to us. And one of the things that Ryan keeps pressing on me about is, he said, churches should be physical. And this is a guy that lives in the digital world. But he said the one flaw that churches have is people show up physically, and then all we do is try to get them to the next physical stop on the journey. So we spend all our time. And he said there can be a digital, what we're calling bridge, between that first encounter you have with them and that next physical stop that you would love them to make. Again, I'm not talking about online here. And so Ryan's been pressing on us, and we've been pressing on our Gromentum leaders to go, what is the digital bridge that we can use between I showed up and I'm going to show up at the next thing, right? So Steve and I were just on the phone today talking about, is there a video, is there a 60-second video that Steve can shoot in Tomball, Texas, that when that guest gets that text, hey, welcome, so glad you visited Real Life, we're cool people, blah, 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 that there's a quick URL link that would be Steve opening in YouTube saying, hey, thanks so much for being here, blah, blah, blah. Like, is there something simplistic? Everybody on this call can do something digital. Sometimes we look at like examples that are extreme, but all of you guys have the ability to do something that can connect digitally with the people that show up as part of our first touch. Anybody want to speak to that? I'll shut up for a second.
One thing we're going to try is we're going to do targeted follow-up communication to new people who came on Easter, but also maybe new people who come in the last month. And obviously we have like a next step environment, that we stole from Lee, but there's something we're going to try for the first time is we're going to do like a dinner for 8 where one of the pastors and I will host a dinner midweek just for people to get to know each other. Again, it won't be communicated to the masses, but just by whoever's contact information we've received over, whether it be Easter Sunday or the last month.
Love it. Joe, as kind of a digital guy, what would you say to guys that are like, man, I don't even think I could do anything digital? What would be the minimum? You think anything's better than nothing?
Yeah, I think anything's better than nothing.
Joel just said he did a 45-second welcome video that's being sent out 1 p.m. following Easter services. Cool. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah, no, I do think anything's better than nothing, but I think at this point, we're in a digital age where excellent graphics are at your fingertips using Canva. There are amazing pictures that you can find online using Pexels. So I would say it's a non-negotiable.
Put that stuff in the chat. You're speaking words that you think everybody knows, but Doug Glenn is over there going, I don't know what a Canva is. So make sure you put it in there.
Yeah, between the apps that are available that are just so user-friendly, and then the websites that are available for simple, quick stock photos that don't suck. it's all at our fingertips. It's just a matter of curating that content. So I think it's all possible. I do think anything's better than nothing, but at the same time, I'd say don't put out crap. Like,
Right.
That's like there's a level
Someone
of
write
excellence.
that down. Someone write that down. Quote, don't put out crap. Don't put out crap. Anybody
There you
else
go.
weigh in creatively here on what you guys are doing in this concise follow-up?
We're trying a very simple survey as well. After we connect with them for the first time, we're going to send them a thing. If they will fill out this little survey of how they came, how they came about to hear about us, what they thought, will they be back?
They hate you. Did they love you?
Exactly. And if they fill it all out completely, we send them a digital gift card.
Love it. I know some churches are actually going back to, one sec, Matt. I know some people are actually going back to more of a personal touch, a little old school. They learned it in COVID, but I know some churches are actually ordering things on Amazon and shipping them directly to their guests. So they're going in and actually they've got something that's a $5 or $7. It's an investment, but they're going in and actually sending something and drop shipping it through Amazon to all of their guests so that they receive it, which is kind of a cool idea. Some people are even personal touch, crumble cookies, stuff like that has become a little bit more popular than it would have been. So there you go.
This is just a small hack, but it's been statistically proven for us. May not be true in your context. If we send a text to our follow-up guests, if there is a link in the first text we send, they typically will ignore it. They'll see it as an automated text. But if we wait and let them respond, and then we drop them a link, if they respond to that, our connection rate with them goes through the roof. So just making sure it's personal in that way can have a huge difference. I know that sounds so small,
No, it's
but not sending someone just this big thing that says, here's what to do, click here, click here, click here. They're kind of like, I get that from Target, I get that from every store I go to. But if it's a real person texting them, not automation, it can make a huge difference and actually make a connection.
Everybody on the call, just listen. There's like 50 of us here. Like some of you guys are like, man, this is just basic 101, but it's really not, in the sense of like, I need you to focus on it. We need you to focus on it. And two, there's different varying levels of lean in here, right? So the ideas you're throwing out are not, they need to be out there because across the board, we all need to hear them and be reminded, even if it's stuff we're already doing. Like I said, we need to scrub it in the next 2 weeks to make sure we're doing it appropriately, because some of us haven't thought about it for a while, and you're sitting here right now not even sure what your team is doing or what the Connect card looks like or any of those things. So you need to go back and scrub it a little bit as you're writing your Easter message. Chris?
Yeah, this, again, all of this stuff may be way intuitive, but one of the conversations we've been having as a staff that we've figured out, we need to get way more personal with both our identification and our follow-up. And it's super scalable because we're not that huge of a church. So it's really easy for us to do it. But one of the things that we're going to be trying to do, and we're going to do it at Easter this front, is any of the leaders that are on stage, we're going to publicly say, hey, if you're new here, we would love to shake your hand and say hello to you. So I'm going to be at our VIP tent after the service, immediately after the service. I'd love to have a chance to meet you personally and welcome you to the church. And it's like super old school, and we're in a giant park. We do one huge service in the park, and it may seem really stupid, but I think it also communicates to our people that my job on Easter is to connect with new people. It's not to rub shoulders with all the people that already go to our church, but the new people are the highest priority to me. So instead of rubbing shoulders with our church people, I'm going to be at the tent meeting new people as a cultural value for us as well. So I don't know if it's going to be good or anything like that, but we're going to do that this year.
Yep. Some of you guys, Chris speaking to more of a smaller scale, some of you guys that are on here that are at a larger scale, is there anything we can learn from you guys? That Matt, you were going to say something earlier. Is there anything from a larger scale maybe that some of these guys could take away?
Well, I'm not a larger scale, almost larger than Chris.
We'll judge that. You're famous. You're famous.
I am. I'm Woodland famous. But one of the things that we've had a great success in is we've realized that over 60% of our first-time guests come with a kid. And a great incentive is to get parents will give you all kinds of information when it means safety for their kid. And so we make a really big deal about of that, and we send the kids all kinds of stuff. We send them stickers and tattoos and t-shirts, and we just bury the kids and stuff, along with, we do have something for the adults, but the kids, when the kids are like, I want to go back, that place was the coolest, they come back the next week wearing the shirt, wearing the stickers, doing the thing, and it makes a huge impression on the family as a whole when their kid gets a piece of mail, because you remember when you're a kid, you love getting mail. So
yeah, love it. One of the things that that I want to stop and just stress right here is the idea of like taking all of this and just kind of bringing us back for a little perspective as we turn the corner here, of like, we all recognize, or I think we do recognize, whatever size your church is, that our Easters are going to be a high point of the year, excuse me, and the reality of what comes after that, generally for a lot of us, is going to turn out to be disappointing. So what I want you to do right now is to figure out, how do I look at a long game, for lack of a better term, around the new people that will identify themselves as having connected at Verve, or having connected at LifePoint or at camp, right? How do I look at a long game? So we're going to tell you right now what to do, or what we would suggest you strategize in the few weeks following. But the reason I want to stop right now is because I don't want you to hyper obsess on that as if that's all that matters. I think that you potentially could also, on a macro level, as you work on it, look at, if I have 25 guests, if I have 100 guests, if Brandon has 300 guests at Compass, is there a way that we can then create maybe a quarter, at least for one quarter, some degree of a process that we're going to loop back with those people just for a quarter? At some point, if there's no engagement, maybe we slow that down. But do our Easter guests hear from us over the course of 6 to 8 to 12 weeks in a appropriate way that doesn't require them necessarily to return the following week for your sex and marriage series? So do we have a holistic plan around how, that was a joke, by the way, unless it isn't. Do we have a holistic plan around how to do that? Okay. So the third thing is, and I'm going to move faster, is this compelling, and I haven't forgot about prayer, is this idea of this compelling next step environment. Again, I don't want to take a bunch of time here, but, and I don't know if Kay actually can talk or if he's just listening. I think one of the things that we're learning here is, some of you guys this may be something you guys need to ponder, because especially for your guests that are the first time, your regular step here, this may be a bigger conversation, is a bit more, if you're honest, it's a bit more of a leap than a step, right? So in other words, I'm a big fan of Growth Track. I know Bosma, some of you guys run Growth Track, but the reality of somebody who, especially who's a 3 or a 2 or a 3, negative 2 or 3 on the spiritual spectrum, like they're just curious about faith or seeking God, their leap into that may be quite a leap to go, you came to Easter, now come to that. So what we would strongly encourage is some degree of compelling next step environment that largely 70-30-ish focuses on the social interaction. Think of it this way. We say it this way. A lot of people will likely move from a public venue to a social venue to a private venue, right? And sometimes we try to move them from a public venue to a private venue real quick, and they're not ready for that. They need that social venue where they can interact, figure out, do I trust these people? Is Steve Owens really a real guy, or is he just a hologram on stage? They need those environments in order to effectively get to that next step, which starts the process right with discipleship, connecting them to Christ, etc. So if you generally have one of those environments, I would try to move it a little closer to Easter-ish, week or two after, so that it's not so disconnected. If you don't have one of those environments and you're like right now thinking, we want all of our Easter guests to come back to Rooted, which starts in September, you probably need to think about some degree of other social step that they can take in. Why are you laughing, Doug? Is that the plan? Doug's like, yeah, that's the plan. Some degree of social step that they can take. And I would say all of you, especially if you're a lead pastor on here, like that would involve you. Like, I don't care how big or small you are, like some degree of like boots on the ground. Chris mentioned before, tent, etc. Some of that. we have a lot of churches that are actually doing week following, within the week or two following, some sort of a connection, social connection there. Okay. But that would be what you're inviting them to. Time out, everybody. When we're following up and we're Kelly Kirschman sending them the survey and all that stuff, we're not inviting them to the Cheesecake Factory. Okay. It's not what we're doing. We're not inviting them to, we got a men's breakfast and we got a ladies' tea and we've got a Mexico mission trip and Joel has a men's group on Thursday night. That's not what we're doing. We've got to decide what is the clear next environment that's the most compelling and most necessary for them to be at. I can't tell you what that is. Kay, Brandon, Derek, Jeff, we can't. You know, you've got to figure out what that is in your context, but to that next environment. Okay. Even if you have to create one and beta test it, do it. It's easy to kill. It's low ROI. Okay. Okay, are you on there? He's in the airport shuttle. Okay. I was going to have him speak to that. Steve, make sure I answer your question around retention real quick. I'll answer it after this last thing. Comeback invitation, this just real quick before we start to land the plane. This is just the idea of on Easter, what are a couple of environments? So obviously a lot of you are going to do like some kind of, hey, come back to our series. I think that's totally appropriate, right? Like we all want them to like, hey, come back a second time. Just be prepared that they're probably not going to change their lives and come back 7 days later, all of them. But that there's some degree of like, okay, this is a place that I can discover. Just kind of a random thing that sometimes people are aware of is the next, in a lot of contexts, maybe not in Belltown, Seattle, Bryce, but in a lot of contexts, Mother's Day is the next big non-church person invite day. So sometimes it might be helpful to promote that next series, but it almost might be helpful to subtly, above the urinal, if you guys are those people, or on the back door of the, or the posters in the lobby or the handouts, to say, hey, we'd love to see you on Mother's Day. It's another chance for you to connect and come. So that's just a practical, non-Christian, de-churched individual may show up and bring mom on Mother's Day, which is May, whatever it is. And so that may be the next likely day that they show up, besides if they're not interested in your series on the 7 horsemen of Revelation. That's when they may show up. So be aware of that. Okay, cool. Steve had asked the question. He texted me and said, that's why I was asking if Kay's on there, because he's the Yoda of data. But Steve had said, what is our target percentage for guest retention? Let me give you a couple potential numbers that might be helpful for some of you. There is turn off my thing here. One is, over the course of a year, a healthy church will have 100% of their average weekend attendance that will identify themselves for the first time over the course of an annual 12-month period. That's health. So in other words, if your average weekend attendance is 250, a good front door, I think we talked about this last month a little bit, a good front door would be if you see first-time data ads equal to that average weekend attendance. That's a marker. Could go up and down, but that would be a marker. Obviously, if it's really low or really high, it could be an indicator of some things, right? And that's based on your average weekend attendance. And I would say that's data. We would say that's data ads. So not just your connection card, but how many people are actually coming in and getting engaged over the course of the year. Out of those, if you could get 50% of those people to actually engage in your, what we would call compelling next step, that would be a healthy engagement level. It would actually be pretty strong. I think, unfortunately, I'm just going to tell you guys this, unfortunately, our level of engagement post them coming and retention, the percentages are not as high as you might think. So that's both hurtful and helpful for you guys to think about. For example, in most healthy churches, only about 20% of the people who are first-time guests over the course of a year will actually take a step of engagement, i.e. they'll start giving, they'll show up at Growth Track, they'll go to Rooted, Alpha, they'll start to serve on a team. Some of those first engagement steps in the Church on Mission, only about 20 to 25% typically will do that out of the 100% that actually show up. I know, but that's actually, I don't know if I'll use the word healthy. That's just reality. But if you're under that, like say, man, we only, we had 100 guests last year and only 10 of them are still around. That would be an indicator that we probably need to scrub our process a little bit to lean into some retention there. That would be what Kay talked about last month, where he said front door wide, back door wide, right? We want the back door, we want the front door wide. I don't know if we can close the back door, but we'd sure love it to be narrow, wouldn't we? Steve, does that answer your question? You want to clarify? You good? So some of the data that Steve would pull from that would help us know whether our process was even working, right? If we're getting people that are identifying themselves to our next environment at a lower percentage than maybe 50%, it at least might be an indicator of we need to think about, are we doing the right environment? Is it at the right time? Are we marketing it correctly? All those sorts of things that may be driving that down from what would be healthy. And then what are we communicating at that environment to actually get people to reach those health numbers? Okay, cool. Clear identification incentive, concise follow-up strategy, compelling next step environment, and a comeback invitation, like a sense of like, here's where your next time for us to come physically with some degree of bridging. Okay, we're not going to get to the other stuff. We'll do it next month. We were going to talk about the crossing in Las Vegas and our ROI exercise. Just put it up there for a second because it'll be fun, and then we're not going to send it out because everybody will be like, oh my gosh, here it is. We did it yesterday. It was a hot mess. It was awesome. So you'll have to come back next month and we'll talk about it. There it is, right? So take it down. It's too late. There it is. It's gone. All right. Any thoughts or questions on any of that? Kay's still there. Kay, you want to weigh in on any of that? Jeff, Brandon? Crickets. Any other thoughts that came to anybody as we talked around what you're doing that, or you know what, I'll ask it this way and feel free to unmute. You're sitting there going to get off the phone. What's your next move when you get off the phone that you weren't going to do before you got on the call? Anybody want to be vulnerable? Keep it short because we got to pray.
Yeah, we're going to just get together as a team and we're going to scrub through how ready are we for our first time guests. I think we're ready, but to go through specifically and ask some of these questions, I think is probably the most helpful thing we can do.
Yep.
Hey, Lee, I think for us, it's going to be establishing a easy next step, the social interaction there. I think that's going to be key for us. We're doing pretty good with the cards and the digital and all that kind of stuff. We need a low bar, low commitment interaction with our guests, hands-on, relational, and that's what we've missed, especially on Easter. And so we're going to be targeting that for us.
Love it. Yeah, you might actually discover something that becomes more permanent, right? By accident. And the way we always talk about it is some of those deeper engagement steps are a little bit more involved, right? Those of you guys that are doing, deep stuff, engage, rooted, those things are harder to pivot, right? Those strategies. But these first time touches, like Derek at our Midtown location, he's literally doing the dumbest thing ever, but it works. Like Derek, you want to tell him what you're doing? Are you too embarrassed?
I don't know if I would call it the dumbest thing ever, but are you talking about donuts?
Yes.
So we just figured out, like, we have all this fancy stuff we're trying to move people to, and our context is much more like
inner city Vegas.
People are not planning their weeks out. They don't have like time affluence, we would say. So we literally day of will say, today we have donuts with the pastors. That's how it's branded.
Wow.
And we'll a lot of times, our church is about 300 people. We'll have 10% of the church show up right there and identify themselves and grab a donut. And then we'll walk them over and get them into the Connect card. But it's just been a simple thing, not fancy, and it works. It works great.
So where Derek and I talk about that a lot, and I really want you guys to hear me on this, because we have churches of all sizes on this call, is like some of this stuff sounds really cheesy and dumb, whatever, but contextualization, like, please get off this call and contextualize. So Becker's in Portland, like, what's contextual there? right? Kyle's in Sacramento. I need you guys to hear me say that. Like, this is the design of these conversations is not, you know, copy and paste. It's principle based that will get you guys to where what you do is more effective, because ultimately we want to connect people to Christ, right? Align them with Jesus, and hopefully connect them in community so that they'll get discipled and grow in that. So we have to have these conversations, because otherwise we're kind of just, you know, swimming in it, and we're not really intentional or strategic as we should be. Okay. Anything else that someone's going to get off the phone and talk about? It's Asbury 2.0 because of the donut.
Again, this sounds
wow.
Again, this sounds really basic. I think I'm just a basic dude, but we talk about all the time, like, hey, let's talk about children's ministry. Are the kids actually going to have fun at Easter? Like, have we even thought that through? I mean, at the very basic, have we actually talked and said, are they going to have a great time? Because if they're not, if we've planned some really boring thing or whatever, or we've just planned something dumb, it's not going to be great fun. They're not going to come back. Like, we can do all the follow-up in the world. Their kids are going to look at them in the face and go, yeah, that sucked. I'm not going back. At least my kids will say the word suck. Your other kids may not say that, but you know, they got to have a good time, and that matters to really talk.
Right. So I would just piggyback on Brandon. It's that holistic approach, right, to what we're doing. And again, we're long-term, right? We're all going to get on this call, April, whatever the date is, and we're all gonna get on the call and be like, how was Easter, right? And we're going to be like, it was great, you know, but the next week we were back down to, we gained 5 or 10% or whatever. That's okay, you guys, because what we're doing is we're building a strategy long-term. Because what I'm kind of trying to do is give you something that really, if I'm honest, shouldn't be Easter centric. This should just be what we do. Right. So it's literally like this, we're framing it from the perspective of a big weekend. But if I'm honest, like, this sort of conversation should be happening on a regular basis within what you're doing. So it's not really Easter centric at all. I lied. So
Lee, I would just add one thing that we've noticed with our Ask the Next Steps is to get as specific as possible. So instead of saying
talk about that, Brian. Yeah, talk about that, please.
Instead of saying like invite to Easter, like we've created a space to say, here's the deal. If you're inviting people who do not go to church, chances are they have Easter plans, because unchurched people still make Easter plans. So we're emphasizing our Saturday night service where people probably don't have plans, and making that our block party, our Easter egg hunt. And so we're like, hey, if you have unchurched friends that, you know, are not plugged in and have kids especially, come to Saturday, tell them about the block party and the Easter egg hunt. They're going to have a blast. And there's a good chance that they don't have plans. Of course, you can invite them on Sunday. Of course, the kids are going to have a great time on Sunday as well. But if you're really trying to get your friends to join you, Saturday night might be the best option. We've learned this with like joining the guest services team. We don't invite people to join the guest services team. We invite 10 people today to join the guest services team. And so like for our follow-up connection card for Easter, we're not having, you know, I'm interested in, check the box, getting baptized. We have getting baptized on April 16th, April 24th, or April 30th. The next 3 Sundays, it's available. Joining Discover on April 16th, not just join Discover. So we're just trying our best to get people to make decisions, because a lot of people think, oh, that's a good idea. I think I should go to Discover, or I'm interested in getting baptized. And then there's no, you know, closing of the deal, if you want to call it that. So we're just trying our best to get actual responses for specific things rather than generate ideas.
What Brian just said is gold, you guys. We had this conversation a while back around the idea of like, if we want people to go to an environment, you might potentially consider like just telling them you want them to go to that environment and having them RSVP, register, et cetera, for that environment, versus going, we just want to get their information, and then my secretary is going to blow up their phone to try to get them to go to this next thing. If we do have a next thing, to Brian's point, let's just guide them like, hey, today we'd love for you to fill this out to RSVP for our Donuts with Derek event. Like, we love, like, to his point, let's be specific, and people may potentially be more likely to do that versus you having to then chase them for 48 hours to try to get them to come back. And who cares if they RSVP? I mean, we care, but I'm saying like, it's not that big of a deal if we get 100 RSVPs and only 50 people come. We still have that RSVP that allows us to then be intentional around following up with them. Okay. Good convo, you guys, real good, especially the Derek Asbury 2.0. Basically, he's saying if you want Asbury, you got to have donuts. So I don't know. I'll just leave that right here in the call. You'll have to theologically wrestle with that. I don't know what to do with it. So there you go. Hey, I am gonna ask. Hey, Snod, are you on there? Where's Snod? Snod, are you alive? Let's see if he unmutes for a second. He may be.
Yes, I'm here. I am here. I am here. No, I'm here.
Okay, cool.
You're good.
Cool. Hey, I was going to ask you to lead us out. I was going to ask you to lead us out in prayer real quick. We have like 2 minutes. I know some of you guys really have to go. Let me say a couple words before he does that, and then we'll get off. Hey guys, I appreciate you being here. Appreciate your impact. Appreciate what you're doing. I hope you'll be encouraged. I hope that this is helpful to you, not in a way that will stress you out, but in a way that will help you get some clarity. And we can kind of debrief it even next time when we're together, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay. Because you guys are all over the country, all different sized churches, all doing the same thing with the same hope and mission. So Snod, just close us in prayer, and then we'll all head off into our conversations with our teams about Connect Cards.
Absolutely. Let's pray. Jesus, I'm grateful for this network and the fact that we get to realize we get to do this with other people, that we're not alone, even in the midst that there can be moments of loneliness. I pray, God, that you would remind us that we have other brothers and sisters in this fight with us, and that we're collectively trying to have an impact for eternity. I pray that as going into Easter, that we'd be reminded to build your kingdom, not our own. But as we do that, we pray for extreme favor, Lord, over our churches, over our families, over our relationships of places, of people that we've met. And I pray, God, that as we lean into some of the ideas that we might have, and some of the things that are going on, I just pray, God, that as we have the discernment to lean in and to lead, I pray, God, that you would give us the ability to see things that are beyond our eyes, and that we could have an impact that would last for eternity. And so I pray that as we pray that favor, that we'd come back next month, and that it would be a month of celebration of the miracles that we have seen, the life change that we have seen. And so I pray, God, that as you have worked far before we could ever see, even like we see in Joshua 3, they would be reminded of the work that you've been doing upstream before this month in the conversations, the relationships in our town. And I pray, God, that when we come back, that we would just simply be the woman at the well, sharing with the friends in the community that eventually changes the whole community. So we pray that over every church all across the U.S. with all the different people that are on here. And God, we're just honored and grateful we get to do this together. So we recognize and give you glory in that. God, it's your name we pray. And all God's family said, amen.
You guys, thank you so much.